I'm one of those people who came to art in middle age from another career. When I was a kid, I always loved art and drawing, and I did a lot of that. And somehow I got into a summer course once at the University of Washington, which was fantastic.
Hello, I'm Roger Whitlock. I teach at the Art Academy. It's a class called the Two-Wash Approach to Watercolor.
What I think of in terms of the class is that to increase people's repertoire so that they have all kinds of subject matter to paint. Landscapes, street scenes, people. My role as a teacher is to provide opportunities for something to happen in students. And so I provide the opportunities. Whether they take them or not is really up to them. And what they do with them is up to them as well. You know, I can give feedback, but I'm just there to provide an opportunity for something to happen. The first wash is quite loose, like this whole painting, this color was put all the way across here, so the roof color, you know, is part of that first. This is the first wash here. I'm not painting objects, which a lot of people tend to do when they paint the watercolor. You know, they'll paint the roof carefully and they don't want something to touch another thing. What happens with this is that this color has I darkened it slightly, and then painted negatively around that to pop that out. And so you get this wonderful glow in here. This is the first wash here and along here. I'm using that beautiful transparency that you can get on the first wash and making it work. These are the fan palms at Foster Botanical Garden. And I think I did something like 17 paintings of those fan palms. And I like the big shapes, but I almost never painted the local color. And that's another, that's often true for me, is that I won't paint the local color, especially if it entails green, which is not my favorite color. But if you look at these fan palms, they're kind of a tired chartreuse, muddy green in actuality. And so I love the shapes, and I love the kind of design possibilities you can get, but I like to make up the color. So one thing I do when I do a painting is I often more or less determine my palette ahead of time, selecting 6 to 8 colors. And I pretty much limit myself to 6 to 8 colors. That way I get a kind of unity in the painting. I'm one of those people who came to art in middle age from another career. When I was a kid, I always loved art and drawing, and I did a lot of that. And somehow I got into a summer course once at the University of Washington, which was fantastic, and learned a lot. I had a wonderful high school teacher for 3 years, an art teacher, and got a small art scholarship to the University of Washington, which I turned down because I also had 3 great English teachers, and I liked English and thought I was going to be a writer, and I didn't think you could be both a painter and a writer, so I went in that direction and ended up getting a PhD in English and not doing any art for almost 25 years. So in the grips of a midlife crisis when I was about 44 years old, I signed up for beginning watercolor class on Thursday nights. Took the same class at the Academy for something like 5 years. At the end of 5 years, I sold my first painting. And I thought, Anyway, I loved art, and I think in a way it saved my life. It's wonderful to discover painter. As a writer, I was somebody who constantly revised. You know, I'd do a piece and I'd put it away for a year and bring it back out, revise it again, put it away, bring it back out. Consequently, it was difficult to get things over the finish line. And so when I discovered watercolor, it was the perfect medium. Perfect medium for me because you sort of knew what you had after 2 hours. You know, it was either good or it wasn't, and there wasn't much you could do to save it. The qualities of watercolor are freshness, spontaneity, you know, and transparency, and you know, after a while you lose those qualities if you keep working on it. One of the things I want to do with a painting is to try to capture the light. The light on this building was so beautiful. You know, that late afternoon light, this very plain white building. I love doing street scenes. And this is a painting of Kaka'ako, sort of a light industrial area here. And this is the Lions Coffee, this is Queen Street down here, and these are these new high-rises that have gone up in the background. And I just wanted to capture the light at dusk in a very, nobody would paint this scene probably. You know, it's a light industrial area, it's not very attractive, but the light transforms it. It really turns it into a beautiful scene. I always remember something that Bob Wood said in one of his classes. Someone asked him, doesn't it bother you that people take your ideas and try to do what you do? And he said, not at all. If I were in a class like this, I would steal everything I could and try to make it my own. And I think that's my philosophy too. Steal everything you can and try to make it your own. Of course, the secret is making it your own. This is a drawing that I did the other day. So I will do a drawing like this, and I will ask my students to come to class with a drawing. I will give them a choice of subject matter. They can do whatever. They choose the subject matter. I might choose the genre, for example. I might say, well, this week I'd like to do city scenes, street scenes. One week I might do skies. One week I might do landscapes. One week I might do people. So there are a lot of variety of subject matters, but the approach is essentially the same each week. That is a two-wash approach. I wish I had I should have had something here with my first wash, but this is the same sketch as a finished painting. And essentially in the finished painting, the first wash you can kind of make out is the yellows, the color on this building here, and the color on the street. So the whole page was covered with a wash to begin with, and then the second wash is the dark that's put on. The idea is that if you put more than two washes, you begin to lose the transparency. And so this is essentially my approach for each class. In '87, I discovered Robert E. Wood, who is one of the members of the California Water School painters, and he was a wonderful painter and a wonderful teacher. So I went to a number of workshops for maybe almost 10 years, really up to the point that he died, and learned a lot from him. He was a wonderful watercolor painter and teacher. The other man that really taught me a lot was one of these Australian painters who are located in Melbourne right now, and there are a whole bunch of wonderful watercolor painters there. Alvaro Castanet was one of them. I took a workshop from him in 2002. I took another workshop the following year, went to South America twice with him, and I learned a lot from him, actually. So he's been a big influence on me. Another guy named Joseph Zerbukvik, also an Australian. Herman Piquel, also an Australian. He really had a big impact on me. But of course I love Winslow Homer and John Singer Sargent's watercolors. And Stephen Quiller, yeah. I went to France for the first time with him to paint in 2000. And one of the big things that I remember about that trip is that he and I and one other person went and painted a night painting on the harbor at Cassis. And that was an amazing experience to paint in the dark. It's a painting I painted this last week. You know, to take something that is not a very pretty subject for a watercolor, industrial sprawl, you know, and this is happens to be Honolulu Harbor and beyond to the Hawaiian eyes, and so this is the first painting I've done, and I would probably paint 10 more of these, varying it, trying different things. And that's another thing I do is I paint in series. This is the start of a series. This is the first painting I've done in the series. I'll probably do 10 more, maybe more paintings of the people, and trying to capture that interior light. I think essentially that's what I'm doing in painting, is trying to capture the light you know, keep evolving. I look at paintings that I did 10 years ago and I don't paint like that anymore. I look at paintings I did 5 years ago and I don't paint like that anymore. So keep moving on, you know, pushing it and trying new subject matter. You really have to make it your own. You can see influences for sure. I had a professor who used to say, you are what you read, you know, and I think you are who you've had classes from in some ways.